Well, welcome to In the House, another episode, and I'm your host, Mark Shiver. So glad to have you participating as we welcome back Representative Erin Paré from Wake County, District number 37. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. It's so good to be with you today.
Boy, you were so good last time. I've been waiting all week to have you back on, and lots to talk about. First, going to review, you did get a bill passed a few weeks ago that was, I think, important. Folks here in Wake County, I know are going to think it's important, but around the state, this is what we're about to talk about is something that I'm seeing more and more of in terms of local districts, county commissions, school boards, this sort of thing being looked at to try to give people more of a voice. So tell us what you did here in Wake County that I think is very important.
Well, thank you. I think it's important too. And I can tell you for sure that it is very, very important to a lot of people in my district. In fact, this has been a conversation that a lot of folks have been having for many, many years. And in fact, there's been members of the General Assembly, maybe like 8 years ago or 7 years ago that tried to fix this problem. And really what the problem is, Mark, is in Wake County, we are the largest county in the state by population. We are larger than 8 states. We have nearly 1.2 million people right now that live in Wake County. And our county board of commissioners is voted on at large. So it is 7 districts, so 7 seats, 7 county commissioners. And the way it is now is they are residency districts. So you have to live in one of the 7 districts in order to serve. But you are elected at large. So say you live in District 3. Well, you can actually vote for all 7 districts, even though you only live in District 3. So it's kind of not very, speaks very well to local representation when you have, some smaller communities and communities of interest around the county that feel like they don't have maybe someone that's looking out for them because all 1.2 million residents are voting for the person that represents them. So you have, 6 more districts worth of population of people that are deciding who represents you. So we all know that elected officials are accountable to the people that elect them to office. So that setup really doesn't work for Wake County anymore, I would argue. And we came to actually a bipartisan compromise after many, many months, and I'm really proud of it. It took a long time to get here, but I think that what we're going to be seeing starting in 2024 is going to provide us more local representation in Wake County. And so that is a move to electoral districts, and then 2 at-large seats will come in 2026. So we will have a little bit of that at-large perspective, but we will have those single-member electoral districts that provide that local representation on the board, which makes complete sense.
Well, and speaking of what you said about having a voice, maybe a district that's more rural and doesn't have as dense of a population, they're getting voted for them by everybody else, so I see very much the importance in what you've done, and I want to say, and I don't know if anybody else has said this to you, maybe they have, but I want to say it to you. I was here when they went through all that several years ago, and it was a mess, and there were hearings, and people were about ready to punch each other, and it was just a very heated thing, and you have been able to steer this conversation. As you said, it's bipartisan. And so I think you've done a tremendous job. So tip of the hat, you've done really well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, it's gone through sort of about a year-long cycle here of having some long conversations. What we ended up with this bill that passed the House unanimously a few weeks ago is essentially my first proposal to the Wake County Board of Commissioners and the Wake delegation in the House. But they were not supportive of it at the time. And so I reworked the proposal and came back this session to have all the Board of Commissioners elected to match our school board, which is single member electoral districts, but nonpartisan. Well, they didn't like that either. So we ended up through a lot of conversations and some coming to the table and looking at the problem and figuring out the problem. I am very pleased that we now have 100% support of the Board of Commissioners and the Wake delegation to what was my original proposal, which is a completely reasonable solution to an ongoing problem. And I think that the people of Wake County are going to be very happy when they go to the polls and vote for their other member on the Board of Commissioners next election and going forward.
Absolutely. And again, good job. That's awesome. The mark of a good legislator is to be able to not only get your bills passed, but get them passed with bipartisan support. And so you're doing very well in another bill that you supported, but that was controversial, and I think just makes good sense. But House Bill 187, Equality in Education, just passed the House last week. It's got to get through the Senate, I guess, and then we'll see what the governor will do if it passes out of the legislature. But talk a little bit about just the common sense that a bill like that makes. People say, well, it's racist, but actually it's not. It's trying to keep racism out.
That's right. Yes, I think this is a completely common sense bill. And I think didn't it pass with some bipartisan support? I think maybe it did, but it should, because, I have 2 school-aged children and they go to public schools here in Wake County. And I was a PTA president. I know a lot of teachers personally, and they're good people. I mean, we have excellent teachers teaching our kids in North Carolina, and especially here in Wake County. So I think what this really is doing this piece of legislation is just kind of saying, look, we need to teach kids how to think, not what to think. And in some circumstances where we veer off that track, and that we do have some teachers that may be sending that wrong message to the kids, like, maybe you should feel a certain way because of what you look like, and one race is superior to the other, and those type of things. It's just completely inappropriate, especially when you're talking about young kids here, young, youth age kids who are learning. They're like sponges, they take everything in. Right. So I think, that is a common sense bill. I think it gives parents a lot of reassurance that kids are in school learning how to think and figuring things out for themselves instead of being told what to think. And in fact, if I can just tell a little story here, Mark, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm the one that's taking up too much time this time.
No, you're good.
I was thinking, when I was preparing to come to the General Assembly in the last couple of weeks, and these type of issues are always on the mind of all of us, as you know. When I was in high school, I remember one situation in my civics class more than any other moment in a classroom in my high school time. And it was when my teacher put a question out to the class about censorship. And he said, he just posed the question. It was something along these lines. It was, should public libraries carry books that teach people how to make gigantic bombs that can blow up a building? Should there be books available like that in a public library? And I don't really remember what I thought at the time or anyone else in the classroom, but I remember it triggered a conversation between the kids, not with the teacher. It was between the kids. And I actually ended up learning a lot from just hearing the different viewpoints of the kids in the classroom going back and forth. And, well, there's a freedom of, press, and you can say what you want to say in a book. And this can be, if you want to read it, then you can check it out, or no, we shouldn't have those type of things in the, that it was just a really good back and forth conversation. And I remember that more than I remember anything from maybe any other class, even something notable, because I remember learning, and it was triggering different thoughts in my mind from just that back and forth dialogue with the students, not from what the teacher told me to think, but what I ended up thinking and how I thought about that conversation from that dialogue with the kids. So it's that type of learning experiences that I think are valuable to kids, and they can come to their own conclusions when they weigh with the information that they're given.
Huh. That's fascinating. And there are a lot of things that I think all of us would have moments that we remember from school that didn't come directly from a teacher. And but I was just sitting here thinking, Representative Pratt, we didn't have this stuff when, and I'm probably a lot older than you are, but when I was in school, none of these issues were even, entering into people's minds, talking about one race being better than another and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, how in the world did we get here? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just crazy. Some of the stuff that is, who'd have ever thought we'd need a law like this?
I know it's kind of it's sad that we would have to need that. I mean, if you really look at little kids, I have kids, obviously, little kids, and they played sports when they were very young, like 3 years old, t-ball and 4 and 5. They just love everybody. They don't care what you look like. I mean, and so it's somewhere along the line, how do adults get off track like that? I mean, when you really look at just humanity, little kids, innocent minds, they love each other because they're human beings, not because of what they look like or don't look like. And, it's just a very interesting to think about where we have come over that from when we were little until adulthood.
Well, we could get into a big, long sociology
conversation
here, but I want to move on to a big, significant bill last week. I think it's supposed to be signed today or tomorrow, expanding Medicaid in North Carolina. And you were supportive of that piece of legislation. And I wanted to ask you, the Republicans have been against it for so long. How did it feel finally supporting it? Was that kind of weird?
Yeah, this is a really hard choice for me, to be honest with you, because, I've been against Medicaid expansion for a long, long time. I'm still not thrilled about it. But the reality is that there are so many people that just do not have access to healthcare. And it's because healthcare is just very, very expensive. I mean, you're talking about people who are working. I mean, that's what this expansion population is. These are people who are working, who just cannot make enough money to afford the gigantic expense that is healthcare, health insurance.
Right.
And part of that's Obamacare, obviously, and maybe that was by design. I don't know, but it's a very sad thing because we have people, and it's not necessarily even in the more urban areas where I represent. It's really rural North Carolina. We have hospitals, medical facilities that are just really having a hard time surviving because folks just don't have that regular health insurance to have their normal health maintenance done. And so, with the managed care system that we have now, I have more confidence in it. But there's no question that we just have a glaring problem here in North Carolina with people having coverage, and because of the cost of it, and it's just astronomical. So I think that it's important. I wish, I like people to be able to work to earn their entitlements, obviously. But in this case, and I think these people, this expansion population they are working. They're just not earning enough to be able to afford the crazy cost of healthcare. And it's affecting our hospitals. It's affecting emergency rooms. There really just is no other good solution at this point. And it was just very clear that this is something that we had to do at this point.
Let me tell you a story since you told me one. I had a situation where I had to go to a doctor about I'd had surgery, and there was some challenges with that place where they did the surgery. It's on my foot, healing up. So it was almost healed. And the doctor, this was a routine follow-up visit. And the doctor was looking at it, and he got out a pair of scissors, and he clipped a piece of dead skin. I got my explanation of benefits from the health insurance. $600 surgery.
Whoa.
Snip of the scissors. I'm like, this is what's wrong with health insurance in our country. That's ridiculous. But anyway, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
No, I know. If you look at the numbers about what it really does cost, even as a family of 4, that's making $38,000 a year, an honest work, they can't afford it. I mean, that's just not because they're not trying hard enough. They just can't afford it. So, and that's too bad. I wish we were not in that situation. I wish we were not. But if you really look at the numbers, which I have looked at over the last year or so, since having this position, and there's just no other solution to it, unfortunately. We can do a lot of free market reforms, which is what I liked, and we are doing that responsibly. However, we really need to fix it on a greater scale, and there's really no other way to do it.
Totally shifting gears here. You've got a bill out there, I think it's House Bill 56, where you want to give some sales tax exemptions and some credits for folks that are responsibly taking care of their firearms. For example, putting in a thing in your gun where you can't, it's like a pistol, a trigger lock, maybe getting a gun safe that you could store these things safely. Now you've got your bill out here, but all of a sudden here's Senate Bill 41. It gets passed, it gets vetoed. Not sure what's going to happen, whether the General Assembly will override that or not. But in any event, does that bill affect your bill, or is your bill still? I don't think there was anything in that bill regarding what your bill is doing. So, how do you feel about the chances of your bill moving forward?
Well, I feel good about the chances of my bill moving forward. We had a lot of support, bipartisan support on my bill. And now let me tell you, we have like Keith Kidwell on the bill, and then we have like Deb Butler. So we have, the whole, I have everybody on this bill.
Wow.
Which is great, because I think everybody can get behind gun safety,
sure.
Right? And I think it makes a lot of sense now. And actually this bill came out of an incident that happened in my district in Fuquay-Varina Middle School, where a little boy came to school with a firearm, and that was a result of an adult not locking up their guns. And I think that makes a lot of sense to, instead of, we're not going to put the hammer down, we're going to incentivize, make it easier for people to afford a safe to lock up their firearm. I mean, we have a lot of ideas about that out there, like a public relations campaign, which I think makes a lot of sense. Those type of PR programs, which I think we're already seeing in legislation. But this would actually provide a sales tax exemption and also a tax credit for the purchase on a limited basis for the purchase of a trigger lock or a gun safe. Of course, we're exempting any kind of glass front curio cabinet type lovely,
right.
But we're talking about a legitimate gun safe. And I think that makes sense given the environment that we're in. I think it's time to do that. And this is something that's supported by the pro-gun people. And it's also supported by those who want to see a little bit more restrictions on guns. So I think it's a really good bill. I'm really proud of it. Well, I'm working with staff right now to figure out how exactly we're going to administer that tax credit. That's really where the holdup is. But I'm looking forward to seeing this move.
I think it's a great bill too, and I hope it does move forward as well. I was just sitting here thinking while you were talking, just in the space of a little over 15 minutes, we've talked about healthcare, and we've talked about gun safety, and we've talked about a variety of things, single member districts in a county. You have to know a lot to serve as a member of the General Assembly, don't you?
You have to read a lot, yes, and talk to a lot of people. And yeah, that I was always kind of amazed. That was the one, I guess, surprise is how vast that spectrum is of issues that you deal with immediately. And so, I think it does take a little bit of time to really understand issues and learn as they progress in time. And I think that's very important to do as much reading as you can possibly do. I think if I had to provide any guidance to anybody who's a new member running for office, I say, please just try to have a little bit of time every day to read, because, everything that you read up on is another tool in your toolbox.
Well, the last question I wanted to ask was, I always always say, I've been down here a little while, and I say every session has its own personality. Every session is different. This session, to me, is flying by like no other that I've participated in over the last 10, 12 years. And the pace is just very fast. And bills are being voted on so far one day a week, which is a little unusual. I'm sure that'll probably change as, more bills pile up that need to be heard and passed, and y'all are trying to wind down. But do you feel like the pace is a little different than, this is your second term? Do you feel like it's different from last time? And if so, are you concerned that maybe you're going too fast, that something might get left in the dust, or are you comfortable with the way things are going?
Well, I enjoy the fast-paced environment. I think that I thrive off of that. It is very different from my first term. I mean, it was just about right now in March. I would say that we were really starting to get going last time. But maybe that was just being a freshman and learning the way around. But I do think that it has been right out of the gate, just full speed ahead, which in some ways I think is good. I mean, you don't want to waste time. You want to use your time wisely and be up here and get things done. I do think that, and maybe it's because we're taking the budget up first this time, that it seems like you really have to have everything in order early on, because you don't want to let anything slip through the cracks. You want to make sure that you're really getting everything in for your constituents and all the bills done that you can do early on. So yes and no. I think it's a good thing. I think that, maybe it is a little bit more fast than we were anticipating. So we're all trying to just make sure we're keeping up as best we can.
Well, Representative Erin Paré, District 37, Wake County, again, just a tremendous time. I could talk to you for another 30 minutes and not even miss a beat, but I know you're busy. You've got a busy week ahead, and I appreciate you making time to join us in the house today. And thank you so very much.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be with you. Hope to be back.
All right.